Bienvenidos a New Dentists on the Block. Welcome to New Dentists on the Block, a podcast featuring new dentists sharing their experiences in the world of dentistry, successes, challenges, and life in between, navigating dentistry together one experience at a time. Happy Hispanic Heritage Month. Feliz Mes Nacional de la Herencia Hispana. Hispanic Heritage Month is coming to a close, and in this episode, we have Dr. Eddie Ramirez. Eddie Ramirez is a dentist and advocate for undocumented students in the United States. Eddie was brought to the United States by his parents at the age of 1.5 years old. The effect caused by his parents' decision to immigrate to the U.S. was not discovered until Eddie was 9, when he discovered he was undocumented. With everything opposing him, he had one dream: to become a dentist. He was the first undocumented DACA student to be accepted into the dental program at the Oregon Health and Science University. Eddie has been vocal about his status and has worked to support other DACA students in pursuing their dreams of becoming healthcare professionals. He practiced at an FQHC focused on migrant communities for 5 years and recently transitioned to private practice. He dedicates his efforts to helping vulnerable populations and providing a voice for those who don't believe to have one. In addition, he stays active with the Oregon Dental Association and is a national leader with the American Dental Association, all while assuming he still has time to mentor and support students from all over the nation and be an example that dreams can come true, even without legal status. Eddie is another one of my dear ASDA friends, and it was so wonderful to hear his story. You're gonna love it. Let's get into today's episode. Eddie Ramirez, welcome to New Dentist on the Block. How are you doing today?
Bien, gracias por tenerme. Thanks for having me.
Estoy emocionada. I'm really excited to have you on the podcast, to reconnect with you. It's been many, many years. We're all grown up, dentists. You know, we're living the dream.
My white hair showing.
I know. Eddie and I are two friends who met in ASDA, good ASDA land that their guests have also been on from ASDA, from our time in ASDA. And I'm just so excited to reconnect with you and to share your story with our listeners. But before we delve into that, I would love if you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Eddie Ramirez. As I said, I've known Tanya since ASDA days, which was some time ago.
Yeah,
I'm practicing just a little bit. I'm practicing over in Oregon, was in public health until recently, where I just transitioned over to private practice. So I'm in the transition period from, working at an FQHC now into a private practice setting where I'm still taking my passion for, public health, and, still incorporating some Medicaid into my practice. So that's a little bit about my clinical summary, and yeah.
Very cool. So for you, did you do any kind of repayment program with the FQHC while you were there?
So it's an interesting story. So I was one of the fortunate ones to have my school paid for by a public health scholarship.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah.
I had tuition covered and I owed service time. So I had a 5-year public health commitment. So yes, I did get some repayment, but it was in time, not in money. If that makes sense. Well, I did get the money,
sure.
but I just owed the time.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Who was it with?
Yeah, so it was a bill passed through the Oregon State Legislature called the Scholars for a Healthy Oregon Initiative, where their intent was to bring, Oregonians into the rural public health sector for programs at OHSU's MD program. I think it was PA, DMD, and I want to say they're nursing, but it was selective programs that once you got into the programs, you could apply for this scholarship, and I was one of the recipients. I was actually the first cohort, so.
Very cool. Yeah. So I did something similar, obviously, with the NHSC. So different, not state, more federal, but more states should have programs like this. I know that Texas used to have it around 2015. No, I think even before that. And they're trying to bring it back, but funding's always an issue. But it's so important. How did you enjoy your time at the FQHC?
Oh, I loved it. I loved it. I always thought that I wanted to go into a residency to get more experience.
Yeah.
But that FQHC was a residency within itself.
Absolutely.
It really got me comfortable doing the clinical dentistry, and I was working with the Latino population. The history on the health center that I used to work for was Virginia Garcia, and it originated from an 8-year-old girl who passed away because she had a wound that got infected and she just went septic. And so we really focused on access to care, but not just access to care, but interdisciplinary health. So we worked with our mental health and pharmacy counterparts. So it was very collaborative, which I
Hmm.
think now that I'm in the private practice, like I miss Epic because like
Mm.
Epic shows me everything, you know. Like
Yeah.
now I'm like, wait, where's the health history form? But I think it's a different type of mentality. I think in the dental schools we're trained on that interdisciplinary care. So when I went to the
Hmm.
FQHC, like I was practicing just that, and
Hmm.
and also incorporating like trauma informed care. And we worked with a lot of migrant refugee communities, and it had its challenges, but I enjoyed working with them thoroughly.
Yeah, as far as being at an FQHC, I completely agree. We have our medical doctors next door, and I can see the medical history that the patient has. However extensive it is, it's really nice to be able to review that. But also, if I need a consult, I can just have them like pop next door, or if we have a medical emergency, they can come over, which is really really nice. For you, what made you decide to move from an FQHC to private practice?
I think I've always been about growth and continuing my leadership, continuing growth, both as a clinician and as an individual. And I think at my FQHC, like I had grown as much as that I could grow there, and I wanted to just expand that skill set. And I started exploring options, and this opportunity presented itself. And it's been a perfect perfect spot for me. I'm still contracted with the CCO. So our Medicaid in our state, you have Medicaid, and then you have the care organizations that kind of run the program. So I'm still contracted with one. So it's like I'm still doing what I'm doing. I'm still having to meet metrics and making sure we're seeing these patients, while also adding like a private sector. So I get to expand my scope, but also do what I was doing. So it's a very good balance, and it's been great thus far.
That sounds like a great place for you to be. I think that you get kind of best of both worlds there.
Exactly, exactly.
Eddie, I want to throw it back to our dental school days, and I would love if you would tell me and our listeners a little bit about your experience with DACA.
So dental school to me was very different. I'm even going to take it back a little bit farther, Tanya, to
Okay.
applying to dental
Yes.
school.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah. Please. Please.
so I knew I always wanted to be a dentist. That was always a passion of mine. I was 8 years old, went to Mexico, came back, said I want to be a dentist. Little did I know what that really meant, both on
Mm.
like how many years of school, what education path to go, but also I was undocumented at that time. Just to get into college, I had a struggle because everything required a social security number. Everything asked for U.S. citizenship. And, and I always say use the word blessed because I was truly blessed to get into undergrad where I had
Hmm.
instructors who paid for my education, my high school instructors that were paying for my education to really push myself towards everything. And then things started taking a turn in 2012. In 2012 was when former President Obama announced the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program. It was really the first time that I was like, okay, this country is saying you belong. You're going to get something that says my name, my birthday, and it says United States of America on it. I said, this is going to solve everything. It's going to allow me to become a dentist, and we're going to move forward with it. But that wasn't the case. I think everybody who received DACA was just aware that you can legally work, but education facilities didn't know what it meant on the education side. Scholarships didn't know what that meant on the scholarship side. So when it came to applying to dental school, I always told myself that I feel was my mistake in high school was not sharing my story. Because in high school, when I shared my story at graduation, what my post-secondary instructor pulled me into his office and said, "Why didn't you tell me this at the beginning of the year? I could have helped you get scholarships. I could have,
Mm.
gotten in." So I said, "I'm not going to make that mistake in undergrad." So I went to my pre-dental advisor and I said, "Hey, like I was undocumented. I'm now under DACA, and I want to go into dental school. Do you know who I can connect with or help me out?" Their response was, "You need to find another career."
Wow.
So right from the get-go, I was discouraged
Mm.
to go to dental school. And that was like, well, like that's not what I wanted to hear. And I said, no, this isn't the end. So I started being my own mentor. I started reaching out to dean of admissions and playing the card of I'm working with a student who's under this situation. What can I tell her? I changed gender. I pretty much like covered the fact that it was me to try to get information. And I remember I got information and even contacted AdSense to see how I can fill out my application and everything. And so I filled out my application, applied to 5 schools, 3 automatically rejected without even looking at the application. Why? Because they said, we don't know what DACA is. We can't take you. You're an international student. We don't take international students. You can't pay for it. So why are we going to take students that can't afford it? And it was just reasons, and it was heartbreaking to get rejected without that fair evaluation.
Mm-hmm.
I was really fortunate enough to get interviewed at Oregon Health and Science University, which is where I ended up going. Mm-hmm. And so went to my interview, and I will always say his name, and he knows I will always say it. Mark Mitchell, if you're listening to this, I owe a lot of this to you. But I remember he came up to me during my interview and he said, you know what, Eddie, I just want you to know that your situation is not a limitation on whether or not you get in. He's like, I want you to go to your interview as normal, just go, right? And so I go there, and then he's like, but we are going to have to talk about paying for it. He's like, but don't worry. I don't want to talk about paying for it. Just do your interview. Finished my interview. 2 weeks later, ended up becoming the first undocumented DACA student to be accepted into the program.
Wow.
Just like that. I got that notification that I've been accepted. And of course, I'm such an emotional baby. I was crying. I was just very emotional, right? But then it came to the reality on financing it. And at that point in time, I was working in Portland State Admissions. And by now, Mark had told me to apply for the Scholars for a Healthy Oregon initiative. And I applied. At the same time, I was applying for loans, but they were rejecting me because I didn't have legal status.
Right. That is.
It came to April, and I will remember this day forever, April 21st, 2014. I walked into work at the admissions office, and I told my boss, and I said, hey, you know what? I made the decision that I'm going to withdraw from the program. And she said, why are you withdrawing? I was like, I can't pay for it. Mm-hmm. School's starting 3-4 months from now. I really need to solidify what I'm going to do next year. And at this point, the admissions office had offered me employment with prospects for a master's program. I said, this is the way I have to go. This is the way I have to go. I will become a dentist later. My path isn't now. My time isn't now. Everything. It's that day that Mark called me and said I had been awarded the scholarship.
I'm going to cry now too. That's so emotional. That's wow. That's beautiful.
It was just I'm going to go. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. And so there I went, became now the first undocumented student to get accepted, matriculate, and, officially
oh my goodness.
Be on campus.
Yeah.
Be on campus. I was really excited. But man, was it hard, Tanya.
Oh, I'm sure.
And I'm not talking about hard. You and I know the curriculum really well.
For sure. Yeah, of course.
But I had to work. I had to work 20 to 40 hours on top of the curriculum. Yeah. So
what were you doing?
Fridays, I would have to leave clinic by 5, and I was taking public transit because I worked at a restaurant. So I would work at the restaurant from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. Friday night. Saturday night, I worked at a dental office as a dental assistant, 8 to 3, and Saturday night, 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. again at the restaurant. So while all my classmates are out studying or socializing or everything, I had to work. And Sundays were my quote-unquote study days or rest days. And I'm not going to lie to you, sometimes I chose to sleep.
Yeah, your body.
Because my body
absolutely.
My body needed it. And that was a struggle my first 2 years because I felt very disconnected to my class. Because I was going to school, going to work, going to school, going to work, studying. It wasn't really until third year where the didactics start cutting back, where you're focusing more on patient care, that I started kind of feeling a connection with my classmates, right? Mm-hmm. But I did that for all 4 years. But then it was the beginning of my 4th year. And that's where, again, it was this what if now? So I remember I was in Klamath Falls, Oregon, which is 5 hours from Portland. I live in the Portland area. I was on rotation, and I remember the Trump administration there made an announcement that they were rescinding the DACA program.
Mhm.
So this was August 2017. I was set to graduate June 2018. And it was like a emotional because when I was away from my family, I was away from my friends, where I was realizing on my own that I was potentially going to graduate and not be able to practice. Because DACA gave me a social security number, DACA
Mhm.
gave me employment authorization, and now it was like, what do I do now? Like, if I don't have legal authority to work, then was this all for nothing? And so from there, I had to say, you know what? I'm going to keep finishing up my program. And again, I said, if it wasn't meant to be, my timeline isn't now, then okay, be it, you know? I was really lucky and fortunate that I was invited to be part of the lawsuits to bring back a DACA back again. Um, DACA was reinstated for renewals. As you know, to this date, new applications are not being taken. It's just renewals. So I was able to continue renewing my work authorization. And with that, I was able to graduate June of 2018. And now adding, first DACA student to graduate and be the first practicing DACA dentist in the state of Oregon,
Mhm.
which sounds amazing and it sounds good on paper, but it 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 sucked. It sucked. Why? Because now I'm in the real world and this can be taken away from me
Mhm.
at any
Mhm.
point in time.
Mhm.
It already happened before, so I had to start practice with this potential, like I can be working
Mhm.
but then not working. And then I had to start looking at alternatives of employment and working with my FQHC and say, hey, like if DACA were to rescind me, can you hire me as a business? Can you hire me as an independent contractor? At the same time, I had a 5 year public health commitment. I'm like, if I can't repay in time, I have to repay in money. But how am I going to repay in money if I can't legally work? So I've always had to prepare for the what ifs, the what's coming. And so that was a struggle in dental school and even those years out.
I had no idea that you worked in dental school. No clue. How did you do ASDA?
Yeah, I made it all
That's
work.
that's crazy. And I personally love that you were very vocal about your status throughout dental school. From a distance, I feel like I followed that journey. I was a cheerleader from a distance. Obviously, I had no impact on what I could do, but I remember your posts when the Trump administration came out saying that they were rescinding it, and the fear that you conveyed and the post that you put. And honestly, it invoked anger. Like, that's so frustrating. All that work, all that struggle to end on a decision that one person makes. Crazy. Absolutely crazy.
And I remember, I think it was as the House of 2017 that I brought the resolution to support undocumented students. And I started being like, we have to, support all our colleagues, regardless of like their immigration status. And I remember said we're the American Student Dental Association, not the American Student Dental Association just for those with appropriate immigration
Right.
status.
Yeah.
And that's why I pushed that resolution, which ended up passing. And since then, like I've really focused my efforts on working with these students. I'm a part of an organization called Pre-Health Dreamers, which I'm on their advisory board. I work with all the dental students. I've been able to help students get into University of Maryland, USC, Loma Linda. I have like 4 or 5 students that are applying right now. And right now, the struggle that I'm going through is a couple things. One is because DACA isn't taking new applications, now I'm working with what we call DACA eligible students. So these are
Okay.
students that are just undocumented. They don't have access to get DACA because they can't submit their application. So they're just full on undocumented, but they want to be dentists.
Hmm.
So it's now like, okay, how do I work with them and now educate dental schools and dental programs that they can still take these students? In October of last year, I was able to present to a DIA with the Pre-Health Dreamers organization just share what I'm sharing here, but also educate admissions representatives from all over the country on what it means to be DACA, what it means to be undocumented, to stop using money as an excuse for not getting these students. Because I told them this is an equity issue. I was like, unless you're evaluating all applications on whether or not they're going to pay, then okay, I will stand back.
Sure.
But from my understanding, we're not evaluating applicants based on their ability to pay. We're looking at DAT, GPA, involvement. We look at all that. Paying is not one of the checkoffs
Right.
whether or not you get in. So I've been able to work with students all over the country. It's honestly an honor to get emails from people that are like, oh, hi, Dr. Ramirez, my name is so-and-so. I Googled DACA dentist and you came up, and this is my story. I want to be a dentist. And I love working with those students, which connects to my second issue where recently I've been able to get my green card. I got my green card through marriage to my husband. I love my husband, babe. If you're listening to this, I love you. But at the same time, it's like, why was marriage my only route to get my green card? And I think people don't recognize what it takes to get a green card. You can't just go and take the citizenship test and become a citizen. You have to have a green card first, and you have to meet the requirements. You have to meet the requirements there to be able to, get that green card. And so when I do presentations, I pull up the green card application. I'm like, tell me which of these categories I fit in. And the answer is always none of them. I'm so glad that, I've been able to go back down to Mexico, that I hadn't been back in 22 years. I got to go to Spain, but at the same time, like, I'm now no longer a DACA recipient, but now I'm an ally for the DACA students. I'm formerly undocumented. So now it's the question, is my voice still as strong? Because
I would say
don't
yes.
want, and it concerns me because I don't want somebody to go up to one of the students that I'm working for and say, well, Eddie got married. Why don't you get married?
Fair. Yeah.
And people
argument.
have said that. And that frustrates me because love is great, but these students are highly qualified. They're successful in their own way. So they deserve to just be here, be home. But that's
out of curiosity, as I'm sure you've probably already brainstormed this, but if you could see, like, what would your ideal path be from, being a DACA recipient to becoming a citizen? What should that look like in your mind?
Let's go back to 2000, the year 2000.
Okay.
When the DREAM Act was first proposed. The DREAM Act, so there's the concept of DACA and there's the concept of being a dreamer. A dreamer is defined as someone who would qualify for the DREAM Act, which was proposed back during former President W. Bush's administration. And it said that if you had graduated high school, you would be granted a temporary green card. Once you demonstrate that you have completed 2 years of military service or 2 years of college education, you would be eligible for your permanent green card, which that would be your entry to citizenship. Why not that for the students?
Why did we get away from that?
Politics?
Yeah.
Simply
said, really.
What it is.
Yeah.
That's really what it is. It would pass, and I can't remember specifically. I think it would pass in the House and then not the Senate, or vice versa.
That just blows my mind because of well, I guess it was the administration, right? So not necessarily Bush who presented it. So it was the administration, and it really just depends who had the majority at that point. But yeah, so I feel like we've just come so far from that time. Things have just become really, really toxic in the political setting on all sides, in my opinion. But yeah, I mean, that seems reasonable.
It's and everybody always talks about, establish a rubric, or, have some qualifications, or, show that they're giving back. I'm like, DACA eligibles, DACA students, even just the flat out undocumented individuals in this country, they're giving back.
Oh, 100%.
And, it brings up a bigger issue. It's not just the students. And I remember being in DC for the 10th anniversary of DACA. I left home early that trip because I didn't appreciate being segregated into an individual community within the undocumented community. It was like, you're a doctor, so you should be able to stay. But what does my title have to do with anything? If an individual is giving back to the community, going to school, hardworking, whatever it may be, our profession doesn't make us so we're, enough to be a citizen. And that was really frustrating and heartbreaking to me that they're even within like the advocacy that some organizations are doing, they're still kind of like grouping us. If you're a doctor, if you're a lawyer, don't base off professions, just base it off like giving back, being a part of the community. We're American in every way but paper.
Very true. I'm so glad that you stood your ground and said, hey, I don't need to be segregated, secularized. Everyone is the same. And it's true, yes, our title's a great thing, but it doesn't make us any better than anyone else, especially when we're advocating for them. That's really sad to hear.
And it's like we always talk about like recognizing our privilege, recognizing like the little privilege that we have. And I think it's something that I'm always cognizant of, that yes, I have doctor in front of my title. I have DMD at the end of my name. Yes, I now have a green card. But like I'm talking to you without those titles. I'm just talking to you as Eddie Ramirez. I'm not talking to you as Dr. Ramirez. I'm not talking to you as, Eddie Ramirez DMD. I'm just talking to you as Eddie, and I always, bring that up because we have to be aware of our privileges, no matter what your privilege may be.
What can the layman, meaning, like myself, somebody who was born and raised here, somebody who is a citizen, what can we do to help?
I get this question all the time. And I think, just educating people on the reality of things. I think, simple things like, sharing like, hey, you can't just become a citizen. Like, did you know, you have to be a green card holder? Did you know to get a green card, you need this and this and this? I think just starting that awareness, and I know you yourself do advocacy as is already, but just really starting to dissipate some of those myths that are out there. And really showing what the truth truly is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, you helped educate me here. There's a lot of things that I feel like I have a notion of and a concept of, and I feel like I try to read about it, especially as like you were posting things, but I don't know the ins and outs of it. You live through it. I mean, you know it through and through.
Yes, and I still learn to this day.
Mm-hmm.
I have just to give a little like backstory. Even when my friends are adjusting their status under DACA, you can leave on what's called advanced parole, which is permission to leave the country and come back in, which I was able to do. You have to apply for humanitarian, education, or work reasons, and you get this paper that says you're allowed to leave the country after this date, but come back before this date. But it also says on there that when you re-enter the country, the officer has the jurisdiction and ability to not allow you back into the country.
Oh my goodness.
So I remember leaving to Mexico March of 2022, like excited, I'm going back to Mexico.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, am I deporting myself? And
yeah.
then I remember
Will I
like
be able to come
landing
back?
in Portland. It's all these questions. And then I land in Portland and I was like, okay, like let's go in here. And then us Latinos say there's the little cuartito, the secondary room inspection. And everyone's like, you're gonna get put in the cuartito. And I'm like, okay. And then they put me in this cuartito and I'm just like, okay, like sitting like very like what's gonna happen. I kid you not, Tanya. I had 4 or 5 friends ready with my attorney's information. I had
I
a
bet.
pre-planned text. I had a pre-planned
Oh my
text to
goodness.
send out to this group in case they were saying like, no, you're not going to be allowed back in. I had told my friends like, in the case that I don't get allowed back in, I'm most likely going to be sent to the Tacoma Detention Center. That's the first one to call with like, I'll try to get you my like. I was prepared for the worst.
The worst.
For
Mm-hmm.
the worst, Luckily, none of that happened.
Mm-hmm.
But we still have to go through that. And to this day, when I'm passing through customs, I'm still scared. I shouldn't be scared anymore. But it's just like this fear that's been engraved in us
For
that it's like,
sure. Yeah,
okay,
it's
like
traumatic.
it's traumatic. So I'm getting over it. I'm getting over that now. But
Here we say, because most people cross the bridge, through their vehicle. We say, "Van a sacar los perros," because they bring out the big old dogs to sniff through the cars. But yes, I am so glad that you're vocal with your story and that you're still so supportive of everyone going through their own journey. I'm so happy that you were successful in getting through all of that. That you and I were able to kind of cross paths, and that I can call you friend because I mean life just can be so different, right? Like if all of that didn't line up for you, where would you be, right? Who
I don't
knows?
know.
Who knows? Yeah.
I I don't know. I really don't know. It's like making the decision. Like now that I got back to go to Mexico, like I also asked myself, if my parents hadn't made the decision to come to the U.S., what would I have been down in Mexico? Would I have had the same upbringing? Would I have had that same passion? I don't know.
Who knows? I think you'd probably still be a dentist, maybe, or doing something else.
Who
You'd
knows?
work at a bakery for sure. Un panadero.
My husband works at a bakery, so
Does he really? I love
yeah.
it. That's perfect. It's a great career. I mean, bread all year round,
Oh,
all the different kinds. I
I
mean, that's
mean,
not a bad career
give me
for
a
sure.
cuernito, give me a
Oh,
concha, you
yeah.
know.
And now I know where to go when I come visit Oregon. I'll come visit you all and I get to go to the bakery. That's so funny. I love
There you
that.
go.
Well, Eddie, I know that both of us are very, very proud of being Hispanic, Latino, and right now during Hispanic Heritage Month, for you, what does it mean to be a Latino Hispanic here in the United States and in the profession?
I think being a Latino it's really important to just remember your roots, remember your language, be proud of hablar español, tener el idioma. You know, it's sad to see these newer generations lose their ability to speak Spanish. And I think we bring a different perspective. We bring culture. We bring salsa, merengue, bachata,
Yes.
everything, you know? And I
We
think
bring
it's
the
important.
sazon. Right?
Yes. You know, and I think it's important to celebrate all of us. And I think it's also, and I always say as a Mexican, that we always remember that we're not celebrating being Mexican, we're celebrating being Latino, which
Hmm.
means Cuban, Dominican,
Right.
Boricua, Colombian. Like we all speak Spanish, we all have different values and cultures, and we need to celebrate them and be proud of them.
Para los que nos están escuchando y nada más hablan español, te voy a preguntar la misma pregunta. Para ti, ser hispano, ser latino aquí en Estados Unidos, en nuestra profesión, ¿qué significa para ti?
Significa representar lo que es nuestra raza, dijéramos los mexicanos, pero seguir sabiendo ese sabor, como dices, el sazón, esa energía, esa cultura, esa positividad, porque tenemos que celebrar ese ambiente, tenemos que celebrar esa cultura y también invitar a todos los que están alrededor de nosotros a que sean parte de esta cultura.
Mhm. Absolutely. Whether they are part of the culture or not, we need to embrace our culture and share it with others because we know how fun and delicious it is. And
Exactly.
it's great to share with others and to learn from other cultures as well too. To embrace everyone, whatever their backgrounds and differences are. I think that that's the beauty of America. It's that melting pot that should be celebrated.
100%.
Eddie, I have enjoyed our time in talking and reconnecting and you sharing your story. If our listeners would like to connect with you, what's the best way?
Uh, Follow me on social media at dental_Eddie. That's EDDIE, not Y, EDDIE. Or, that's the best way. Follow me on there, send me a message. If you're an undocumented student or DACA student listening to this, connect with me through there. Also connect with Free Health Dreamers. We're at PH Dreamers on Instagram, and I will connect you with a cohort of students who are on your same shoes wanting to be dentists. Or if you want to be a doctor, I have those too.
Eddie's the right person for that. But if I can serve in any way as an outlet to help support you in your journey to becoming whatever professional you'd like to be, please let me know because we know a lot of people and I'm sure we can find the right connection for you. Between Eddie and I, I'm
Yeah,
sure we can find anyone to help you.
exactly.
So please don't feel weird in reaching out. We care about helping. That's kind of one of the reasons I put this podcast together. I want to share the story of my fellow peers. Everyone has a story to share, and everyone has different pearls in their lives that have really changed them and that they learn from. That I feel that others can learn from as well too. So, Eddie, thank you again for your time.
Thank you for having me. This has been great.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of New Dentists on the Block. If you'd like to connect with Eddie Ramirez, you can find him on Instagram, dental_Eddie. If you'd like more information about pre-health dreamers, you can find them on Instagram at PHDreamers. You can connect with me on Instagram at tsmaestas.dds. If you have a dentist that you would like to see on this podcast, be sure to follow us and send a DM on Instagram at New Dentists on the Block. Please sure to subscribe and leave a review for this podcast. We'll catch you next time.